Get your hands off that card reader, Walter. You are done here. Effective immediately. You are terminated for gross insubordination and willful sabotage of our warehouse throughput. Pack your garbage and get out of my sight before I have security throw you onto the pavement. And do not even think about your severance package. You breached your contract the moment you tried to dictate how I run my facility. Bradley Thorne's voice echoed off the concrete walls of the fulfillment center, his face contorted in a smug, power-drunk grin. I didn't say a word. I simply looked at him, slid my personal state-certified cryptographic smart card out of the terminal, slipped it into my pocket, and walked out. Before that Friday afternoon disaster, my life was defined by order, safety, and routine. My name is Walter Vance. I am 52 years old, and for 18 years, I have been the safety director at the Thorne Logistics Group Regional Distribution Center in Columbus, Ohio. It is a massive, 450,000 square foot concrete warehouse that handles regional distribution for multiple heavy goods manufacturers. On any given day, we have 80 forklifts buzzing through narrow aisles, three-tier cantilever racks stacked 25 feet high with industrial building materials, and over 200 floor workers pulling shifts around the clock. In an environment like this, a single mistake does not just cost money, it costs lives. I started working here back in 2008 when the company was still run by Donald Thorne. Donald was a self-made logistics veteran who understood that safety and efficiency were two sides of the same coin. He hired me when I was 34, fresh out of my engineering safety certification program, because he wanted someone who would keep the state regulators off his back and the workers out of the hospital. For nearly 2 decades, I did exactly that. I knew every inch of that concrete slab. I knew the exact pressure levels of our early suppression fast response sprinkler systems, the maintenance cycles of our heavy lift reach trucks, and the chemical composition of the battery charging bays. The heart of my authority lay in a state-mandated regulatory compliance system. Under Ohio Revised Code Section 3781.20 and local municipal industrial codes, any warehouse storing hazardous class materials or operating heavy machinery over a certain threshold must maintain active fire life safety and hazardous material handling logs. These logs cannot just be filled out on paper. They are managed through a secure, encrypted state portal. Every Sunday night before midnight, a licensed safety engineer must physically insert a state-issued cryptographic smart card into a designated card reader, verify the weekly inspections, and sign off digitally. I was the only person in the entire facility who held the active state certification required to possess that card. The smart card was issued to me personally by the State Board of Building Standards. It was tied to my engineering license, not to the company. Without my weekly digital signature, the portal would flag the facility as non-compliant, and the local county building authority would automatically suspend the occupancy permit at 12:01 a.m. on Monday morning. Donald Thorne understood the importance of this, which is why he paid me a comfortable salary and stayed out of my way. But things changed 6 months ago when Donald, now 64, decided to take a step back from daily operations. He remained the CEO, but he handed the reins of the Columbus Fulfillment Center to his 31-year-old nephew, Bradley Thorne. Bradley was a business school graduate who had never spent a single hour driving a forklift or staging a pallet. He arrived at the facility wearing a tailored suit, carrying a tablet, and looking at our operations as nothing more than lines on a spreadsheet. From day one, Bradley made it clear that he viewed my safety protocols as an expensive nuisance. He was obsessed with throughput metrics, dock-to-stock times, and pick rates. His entire compensation package was tied to a performance structure that promised him a $150,000 quarterly bonus if he could increase warehouse output by 15% while cutting operational costs. To him, my daily inspections, safety stand-downs, and maintenance holds were just speed bumps blocking his path to a massive paycheck. During our very first meeting in his glass-walled office, Bradley pointed to a chart on his screen. "We are losing 30 hours a week to forklift maintenance and operator rest periods, Walter," he said, tapping the glass. "I want those trucks running 24/7. And this safety briefing you do every Monday morning? That is 20 minutes of non-productive time for 200 people. That is $40,000 of wasted labor every month. We are cutting it. I looked at him, keeping my voice steady. Those forklift inspections are required by OSHA Standard 1910.178, Bradley. And those weekly safety briefings are the reason we have gone 600 days without a reportable lost time injury. If we cut corners, someone gets hurt, and the state will shut us down. Bradley smirked, leaning back in his leather chair. The state only shuts down companies that do not know how to manage their paperwork, Walter. We are going to modernize this place, and that means getting rid of outdated bureaucracy. I left his office that day with a heavy feeling in my chest. I knew right then that Bradley Thorne did not just want to improve efficiency. He wanted to dismantle the safety framework I had spent 18 years building. He saw me as a relic of his uncle's era, an obstacle to be cleared. But he did not realize that the concrete foundation he was standing on was anchored entirely by the little plastic smart card sitting in my wallet. By the second month of Bradley's tenure, the atmosphere in the warehouse had completely shifted. The steady, methodical pace of our operations was replaced by a frantic, high-pressure rush. Bradley introduced a new digital dashboard that tracked individual pick rates in real time, displayed on giant television monitors hung from the ceiling. Workers who fell behind the target were publicly highlighted in red. The pressure was intense, and the floor workers, desperate to keep their jobs, started cutting corners. The first major safety violation occurred in the forklift fleet. Bradley ordered the maintenance lead, a young guy eager to please, to bypass the mechanical speed limiters on all 80 Class 1 forklifts. He increased their maximum speed from the standard 5 miles per hour to 9 miles per hour. It might not sound like a lot, but when you are driving an 8,000-pound machine, carrying a 3,000-pound pallet of sheetrock down a narrow aisle, 4 extra miles per hour dramatically increases the stopping distance. I found out about it during my Wednesday morning inspection when I clocked a forklift flying past the shipping dock. When I checked the fleet telemetry logs, I saw that the speed limits had been systematically altered across the entire fleet. I went straight to Bradley's office. Bypassing forklift speed limiters is a direct violation of OSHA Standard 1910.178, Bradley. You are doubling the risk of a pedestrian collision. The stopping distance at 9 miles per hour is twice what it is at 5. Bradley did not even look up from his tablet. Our pickers are hitting their numbers, Walter. The drivers are professionals. They can handle a little extra speed. If they cannot, they should not be driving. We are keeping the speed limiters off. I documented the conversation, took a screenshot of the modified fleet telemetry, and uploaded it to our internal compliance database under Safety Audit Report 402. I did not realize then that Bradley had already instructed the IT department to grant him administrator access to my department's database. The next week, the violations escalated. We received a massive shipment of industrial lithium-ion batteries and Class 2 aerosol cans from a new manufacturer. Under NFPA 30 fire safety codes and OSHA Standard 1910.106, these materials are classified as highly hazardous and must be stored in Section A, which is equipped with specialized fire barriers and an early suppression fast response sprinkler system capable of handling chemical fires. Instead, Bradley ordered the receiving crew to stage the pallets in Section C, which had standard ceiling sprinklers and was closer to the outbound shipping lanes. He did this simply to save the drivers 30 seconds of transit time per load. When I pointed out that Section C was a disaster waiting to happen if a battery pack ruptured and caught fire, Bradley waved his hand. The shipment is going out in 3 weeks, Walter. It is temporary storage. We do not have room in Section A anyway because of the holiday stock. Just sign off on it. I will not sign off on an NFPA violation, Bradley, I said. If there is a fire in Section C, the sprinklers will not contain it. The entire warehouse will burn to the ground, and our liability insurance will be voided. I logged into the compliance portal that evening to file a formal hazard warning. But when I searched for my previous report on the forklift speed limiters, it was gone. The entire file for Report 402 had been deleted. I checked the database audit logs and found that the admin account, Bradley's account had deleted the file at 4:15 p.m. He was erasing the paper trail. I immediately plugged a secure flash drive into my terminal, downloaded the raw database audit logs showing his deletions, and printed physical copies of all my safety reports, locking them in my personal desk drawer. The breaking point came on a Friday afternoon. One of our senior forklift operators, Toby Miller, was pulling his 14th consecutive hour on a double shift. Bradley had been mandating overtime all week to clear a backlog of building materials. Toby was exhausted. As he was backing a heavy load of steel studs out of a racking aisle, his foot slipped on the accelerator. The forklift, running at the bypassed 9 miles per hour, slammed into a structural concrete support column in Section B. The impact was deafening. Concrete chipped off the column, and the entire 3-tier cantilever rack next to it shook, sending a half-ton pallet of timber crashing down into the aisle. Luckily, no one was in the immediate path of the falling timber. But Toby was badly shaken, his hand bleeding from a scrape against the steering wheel. I ran to the scene, immediately shut down the aisle, and initiated a lockout-tagout protocol on the forklift, pulling the key and placing a physical red tag on the steering wheel to prevent anyone from driving it until a full structural inspection of the concrete column could be conducted. 5 minutes later, Bradley marched down the aisle, flanked by 2 shift supervisors. "What is going on here? Why is this aisle blocked? We have 3 trailers waiting at the dock." "This column has structural damage, Bradley," I said, pointing to the cracked concrete, "and this forklift needs a full brake inspection." The operator was exhausted after working 14 hours. "I am locking down this quadrant until a structural engineer clears it." Bradley's face turned bright red. "You do not lock down anything in my facility, Walter. Toby, get back on the truck and move these pallets." Toby looked at me, then at Bradley, visibly terrified. "I cannot, Bradley. My hands are shaking, and the brakes felt mushy at that speed." I stepped between Bradley and the forklift. "Toby is off the floor, Bradley. He is going home, and this truck stays red-tagged. If you bypass lockout-tagout, you are committing a willful violation of OSHA Standard 1910.147. That carries a personal criminal liability." Bradley glared at me, his teeth clenched. "Get back to your office, Walter." Now at 4:30 p.m. my desk phone rang. Bradley wanted to see me. When I walked into his office, he was sitting behind his desk, flanked by the HR representative, a young woman who looked incredibly uncomfortable. On the desk was a cardboard box. Bradley looked up, his expression cold and smug. "You are done here, Walter. As of this moment, you are terminated for gross insubordination and willful sabotage of our warehouse throughput. You have repeatedly tried to disrupt our operations, and today you crossed the line by locking down an entire shipping quadrant without my approval." I looked at the HR representative. "Under my employment contract, signed in 2008, I am entitled to 12 months of severance pay, which equates to $180,000, plus my vested pension bonuses." Bradley let out a short, mocking laugh. "You are not getting a dime of severance, Walter. We are firing you for cause. Your contract explicitly states that any employee who willfully sabotages business operations forfeits their severance. HR has already processed the paperwork. Your Active Directory credentials have been revoked. Pack your garbage and get out of my sight before I have security throw you onto the pavement." I stood there, looking at him. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I looked past him at the compliance dashboard on the wall, which was currently green. Then I looked at the card reader on my desk terminal. I reached over, slid my personal state-certified cryptographic smart card out of the slot, and put it in my pocket. "Understood," I said calmly. "I will clear my desk." Bradley smirked, thinking he had won a decisive victory. He had no idea that by taking that tiny piece of plastic with me, I had just pulled the pin on a financial grenade. I walked out of the fulfillment center carrying a single cardboard box containing my personal belongings, a few framed photographs of my late wife, a coffee mug, and my engineering textbooks. The security guard, an older guy named Larry who had worked with me for a decade, looked down at the floor as I passed. I knew he was ordered to watch me leave, but he leaned in and whispered, "Sorry, Walter. This place is going to hell without you." I gave him a warm nod and walked out to my truck. Sitting in the driver's seat of my Ford F-150, I looked back at the massive concrete structure of the warehouse. My hands were steady. I felt no anger, only a profound sense of clarity. Bradley Thorne thought he had outmaneuvered me by using a loophole in my employment contract to deny me my $180,000 severance. He believed that by cutting off my network access, he had stripped me of my power. But Bradley's MBA had taught him how to manipulate spreadsheets, not how to navigate the complex web of state and federal regulations that kept his business legally alive. I drove home to my quiet suburban house in Westerville. My first order of business was to protect myself. I sat down at my personal computer and plugged in the secure flash drive containing the database audit logs and the deleted safety reports. I logged into the official OSHA Whistleblower Protection Program portal. Under Section Silicon City of the Occupational Safety and Health Act, it is illegal for an employer to retaliate against an employee for reporting safety violations. I drafted a comprehensive, highly detailed complaint. I documented the mechanical bypassing of the forklift speed limiters, the storage of hazardous lithium-ion batteries and Class II aerosols in Section C without ESFR sprinklers, and the forced 14-hour shifts that led to Toby Miller's crash. I attached the screenshots of the deleted compliance reports, the raw database audit logs showing Bradley's admin account executing the deletions, and the photos I had taken of the cracked concrete column in Section B. When I hit the Submit button, the system generated a confirmation number, OH202687941. That was the federal fuse lit and burning. But federal investigations take time. OSHA inspectors might take weeks to show up. I needed a mechanism that would act immediately, and that mechanism was already built into the state's municipal code under Ohio Revised Code Section 3781.10. The Columbus facility's commercial occupancy permit was legally contingent on the submission of a weekly fire, life safety, and hazardous material handling log. The state's compliance portal, known as the Ohio Safety Integration System, OSSS, required this sign-off every single week. The deadline was Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. The security protocol of the OSSS portal did not rely on simple usernames and passwords, which could be easily reset or shared. It required a physical, hardware-based two-factor authentication. I had a state-issued cryptographic smart card that looked like a credit card with an embedded microchip. To sign off on the logs, I had to physically insert that card into a USB reader connected to my computer, enter my personal identification number, and let the system verify my active professional safety engineer licensed database records with the state. Bradley had revoked my Active Directory credentials, meaning I could no longer access the company's internal servers. But he could not revoke my state smart card. It belonged to me, registered under my license with the State Board of Building Standards. Furthermore, because Thorne Logistics Group had listed me as their sole designated safety engineer of record in their municipal permit application, the state portal would not accept a signature from anyone else. If Sunday night passed without my digital signature, the OSSS portal would automatically generate a critical alert. This alert would go directly to the Franklin County Building Inspector's Office and, crucially, to the automated database of Great American Underwriters, the insurance consortium that provided Thorne Logistics Group with their $40 million general liability and property insurance policy. Without an active safety certification, the warehouse's commercial occupancy permit would be immediately flagged as suspended. Operating a commercial facility with a suspended occupancy permit is a third-degree misdemeanor under Ohio law, and it automatically voids the liability insurance policy. No insurance meant that every forklift, conveyor belt, and dock leveler in the building was legally forbidden from operating. On Saturday, I did not think about the warehouse. I spent the morning working in my garden, pulling weeds and trimming the tomato plants. In the afternoon, I went to a local hardware store to buy some cedar planks for a shelving project I was building in my garage. It was a beautiful, crisp autumn day, and for the first time in 18 years, I did not have to worry about whether a forklift driver was speeding or a fire exit was blocked. I was just Walter Vance, a retired engineer enjoying his weekend. On Sunday night, I sat in my living room with a cup of chamomile tea. At 11:50 p.m., I looked at the digital clock on my microwave. I knew that at the warehouse, the third shift crew was currently loading trailers for the Monday morning delivery rush. Supervisors were probably wondering why the compliance dashboard in the main office was flashing a yellow warning light, indicating that the weekly sign-off was 10 minutes away from expiration. I pictured Bradley Thorne, asleep in his downtown condo, dreaming of his $150,000 quarterly bonus. He had probably forgotten all about the weekly safety logs, assuming it was just another automatic background task that would resolve itself. At 11:59 p.m., the deadline passed. At 12:01 a.m. on Monday, the OSIS database registered the missing signature. The system did exactly what it was programmed to do. It updated the status of Thorne Logistics Group's Columbus facility from active compliant to unlicensed occupancy permit suspended. Within seconds, automated notification emails and data packets were dispatched to the Franklin County Building Standards Division, the Columbus Fire Department's Prevention Bureau, and the Risk Assessment Database of Great American Underwriters. The trap was set, and the gears of the bureaucratic machine began to turn in total silence. I finished my tea, turned off the lights, and went to bed. For the first time in 6 months, I slept like a baby. Monday morning arrived with a clear sky and a biting autumn chill. I woke up at 6:30 a.m., brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and sat on my back porch. I knew that at the warehouse, the storm had already hit. At 6 a.m., Neil Hastings, the senior building inspector for Franklin County, arrived at the Thorne Logistics Regional Distribution Center. He did not come alone. He was accompanied by 2 deputies from the Sheriff's Department and 2 compliance officers from the OSHA Regional Office who had been dispatched early due to the emergency whistleblower complaint I had filed on Friday night. When Hastings walked into the main lobby, he bypassed the receptionist and marched straight to the warehouse floor. He found the forklift fleet already operating at high speed, carrying pallets to the loading docks. He immediately demanded to see the general manager. Bradley, who had just arrived, walked down the stairs from his glass office, looking annoyed. "What is the meaning of this?" Bradley asked, folding his arms. "We are in the middle of our morning shipping window. You are disrupting our operations." Neil Hastings did not flinch. He pulled out a printed copy of the OSIS portal status page. "Mr. Thorne, your facility's commercial occupancy permit was suspended at 12:01 a.m. today. You failed to submit the mandatory weekly fire life safety and hazardous material handling log. Under municipal code, this facility is officially operating without a valid license." Bradley's face went pale. "That is a clerical error," he stammered. "Our safety director usually handles that. I will have him log in right now and sign it. Your safety director was terminated." "On Friday," Hastings replied. "We checked the state database, and even if he were here, he could not sign it because we have just received a formal report detailing multiple willful safety violations, including the systematic deletion of safety records and the illegal storage of hazardous materials." Hastings pulled a giant, bright orange poster from his clipboard and taped it directly to the glass entrance doors of the main lobby. The poster read in bold black letters, a pansy suspended. "Noe by order of the building authority." Hastings turned to the sheriff's deputies. "Gentlemen, clear the floor. All operations must cease immediately." Within 30 minutes, the entire warehouse was cleared of personnel. The 80 forklifts were parked in silence, and the massive conveyor belts ground to a halt. Out in the yard, incoming freight trucks began to stack up. By 8 a.m., a line of 40 semi-trucks was backed up for 2 miles down the county road, blocking local traffic and prompting calls from the local police. But the real disaster for Bradley was unfolding in the digital realm. The moment the occupancy permit was suspended, Great American Underwriters' automated risk management system flagged the change. At 7:30 a.m., they sent a formal notice to Thorne Logistics Group's corporate headquarters in Chicago. Their $40 million general liability policy was officially suspended due to operating an unlicensed, non-compliant facility. Without liability insurance, the facility was a legal dead zone. If a worker was injured or a fire broke out, the company would have to pay every dollar out of pocket. 10 minutes later, the automated compliance system of Apex Retail Distribution, our largest client, who held a $12 million annual logistics contract with us, detected the insurance suspension. Under Clause 14 of the Apex Service Level Agreement, Thorn Logistics was contractually required to maintain active general liability insurance and a valid occupancy permit at all times. A failure to do so constituted an immediate material breach. The clause carried a $50,000 daily penalty for service disruption and allowed Apex to terminate the entire $12 million contract if the breach was not cured within 48 hours. My phone rang at 8:45 a.m. I looked at the caller ID. It was Bradley Thorn. I took a slow sip of my coffee and answered. "Walter Vance," I said. "Walter!" Bradley screamed, his voice cracking with panic. "What did you do?" "The building inspector is here. The sheriff shut down the floor, and OSHA is conducting a wall-to-wall audit. They are saying the occupancy permit is suspended. You need to log in to the OSIS portal right now and sign off on the logs." I leaned back in my chair. "I cannot do that, Bradley. You revoked my Active Directory credentials on Friday, remember? I am no longer an employee. I don't care about your internal login," Bradley yelled, his tone desperate. "Use your card. Just plug it into a computer and sign the state portal. The company is losing $50,000 a day in penalties to Apex, and they are threatening to cancel the entire contract." I took another sip of coffee. "The state smart card is linked to my personal professional engineering license, Bradley. To sign off on those logs, I must certify under penalty of perjury that the facility is compliant with all state and federal regulations. With 90-mile-per-hour forklifts, blocked fire exits, and lithium-ion batteries stacked in Section C without ESFAR sprinklers, I would be committing a felony. Not to mention, you deleted the internal safety audit reports showing those violations. I will restore your credentials. I will let you move the batteries." Bradley was practically pleading now. "Just come in and sign it today." "I am sorry, Bradley, but I am retired," I said calmly. "And since I was terminated for cause, I have no legal authority to act on behalf of Thorn Logistics Group. You told HR that I willfully sabotaged the company. I suggest you find another certified safety engineer with an active Ohio smart card to sign off for you. You know there isn't anyone else in the county who can do it on short notice." Bradley screamed. "I will sue you for this, Walter. I will sue you for damages." "You do that, Bradley. But before you call your lawyers, you might want to check the database audit logs. The ones showing your admin account deleting Safety Audit Report 402. I saved a copy of those logs before I left. OSHA already has them." "Have a good day." I hung up the phone. By 11 a.m., Donald Thorn, the 64-year-old CEO of the company, had landed his private jet at the Columbus airport and was rushing to the facility. He walked into a nightmare, a silent warehouse, a line of angry truck drivers honking their horns, and a team of federal OSHA inspectors documenting every single violation on the floor. Donald Thorn had spent 40 years building this company from a single truck into a regional logistics empire. He knew immediately that his nephew's greed had brought the entire enterprise to the brink of collapse, and he knew there was only one man who could pull them back from the edge. At 8 a.m. on Tuesday, my phone rang again. This time, it was not Bradley. The caller ID showed Donald Thorn's personal mobile number. I answered on the second ring. "Donald," I said, keeping my tone respectful but firm. "Walter," Donald's voice sounded tired, aged by 10 years. "I am standing in the Columbus warehouse. It is completely dead. There are 3 OSHA investigators writing up citations for the forklift speed limiters and the battery storage in Section C. Neil Hastings won't even talk to me about reopening until we have a certified engineer sign off on the safety logs. I need you to help me fix this. Can we meet?" I agreed to meet him at the Westerville Grill, a quiet local diner 10 minutes from my house. When I arrived, Donald was already sitting in a corner booth, a cup of black coffee in front of him. He looked like a man who had watched his life's work crumble in 72 hours. He stood up, shook my hand, and sighed. "I am sorry, Walter. I should have paid closer attention to what Bradley was doing here. I trusted him because he had the degree. But he is a fool. He managed to alienate our most experienced staff, break federal safety laws, and put a $12 million distribution contract in immediate jeopardy. He did it to chase his quarterly performance bonus." "Donald," I said, sitting down. "He bypassed speed limiters on heavy machinery, stacked lithium-ion batteries next to cardboard packaging without proper sprinklers, and deleted my safety audit logs from the database to hide the evidence. Toby Miller almost lost his hand because he was forced to work 14 hours straight. Donald rubbed his temples. I know. OSHA showed me the telemetry logs they pulled. Bradley was trying to blame you, but the database audit trail clearly shows his admin account deleting the files. The board is furious. Apex Retail Distribution has already issued a formal warning. If we are not operational by Wednesday morning, they are canceling the contract. What will it take to get you back, Walter? I pulled a single sheet of paper from my breast pocket and slid it across the table. I had drafted my terms the night before. I did not want my old job back. I had no interest in dealing with daily corporate politics anymore. I wanted security, respect, and compensation for the insult of being fired for cause. Donald put on his reading glasses and scanned the document. First, the immediate termination of Bradley Thorne with cause. His termination paperwork must state that he was fired for willful safety violations and database tampering. That would ensure he would never get a management role in a logistics firm again. Second, the immediate payment of my full $180,000 severance package, which was wrongfully denied to me on Friday, plus all my accrued pension bonuses. Third, my reinstatement not as an employee, but as an independent safety consultant. I would work 20 hours a week, conducting inspections and signing off on the weekly OSIS logs. The consulting fee would be $350,000 annually, with a $100,000 upfront retainer to be wired to my account before I inserted my smart card into the reader. Fourth, the immediate restoration of all forklift speed limiters to 5 miles per hour, the relocation of all hazardous materials to Section A, and a strict policy banning any shifts longer than 12 hours for equipment operators. Donald looked up from the paper, his face pale. $350,000 a year, plus the severance? Walter, that is double what we were paying you. It is, Donald, I replied. But right now, the warehouse shutdown is costing you $50,000 a day in penalties to Apex, and if they cancel the $12 million contract, the Columbus facility will be worthless. Not to mention the OSHA fines, which I estimate will be close to $300,000 for willful violations. My fee is a drop in the bucket compared to what you lose if that orange tag stays on the door. Donald stared at the paper for a long minute. He knew I had him cornered. He had no other certified safety engineer who could step in. The state certification process took months, and the county would not accept anyone else without a full re-application process. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his pen, and signed the bottom of the page. The wire transfer for the severance and the retainer will hit your account in 2 hours. Bradley will be escorted from the building by security at noon. Please, Walter, tell me you can get the occupancy permit restored by tomorrow morning once the wire transfer clears and I verify that the forklifts are limited and the batteries are moved. I will sign the logs, I said. At 2 p.m., I checked my bank app. The balance showed an additional $280,000. The $100,000 retainer, plus my $180,000 severance package. On Wednesday morning, I walked back into the Columbus Fulfillment Center. I was not wearing a corporate badge. I wore my high-visibility safety vest and carried my clipboard. In the lobby, I passed Bradley Thorne. He was standing by the reception desk, flanked by 2 armed security guards, holding a small cardboard box containing his desk items. His face was a mask of pure, bitter defeat. He looked at me, his eyes burning with rage. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I simply walked past him, heading up the stairs to the mezzanine. I met Neil Hastings and Donald Thorne on the warehouse floor. I personally verified that every forklift had its speed limiter re-engaged. I walked Section C and confirmed that the lithium-ion batteries had been moved to the fire-rated Section A. Once satisfied, I sat down at the supervisor's terminal, plugged in my state-issued cryptographic smart card, entered my PIN, and clicked the digital sign-off button on the OSIS portal. Within 2 minutes, the county system updated. The occupancy permit was restored to active status. Neil Hastings walked to the front glass doors, ripped down the bright orange suspension tag, and gave me a thumbs up. The warehouse roared back to life. The conveyor belts started hummed, and the first semi-trucks began rolling into the bays. I walked back down to my truck, my consulting work for the week completed in less than 4 hours. I had protected the workers, restored my financial security, and removed a dangerous, arrogant executive who thought he could treat human lives like disposable assets. As I drove away from the facility, heading back to Westerville to finish my cedar shelves, I realized that true power does not come from a corporate title. It comes from knowing the rules, holding the keys, and being willing to stand your ground when the pressure builds.